Good evening, and welcome to the Parent Impact, presented by the National Parents Union. I'm your host, Tafshier Cosby, and thank you for joining us tonight. You could have been anywhere surfing the net, but you are here with us, and we are appreciative. So it is, what is today? It is Tuesday, February the 9th. It is a Black History Month. Of course, we are celebrating all month long, even though we know we are Black every day, right? Black 365. That's how I think about it. But we are celebrating our ancestors, people, our Black people out in the community, in these states and cities who have made a difference. Also, I want to urge everyone to remember to celebrate people who are making history currently, right? We think about everyone who's made history in the past. Let's think about Black leaders who are being elected now, even in 2021. We have some people from the state of New Jersey, some men and women, Black men and women who are being elected now, right? 2021, 2020, West Orange got their first Black councilwoman. Montvale got their first Black school board member. So let's also celebrate, while we celebrate the past, let's also celebrate our current leaders who are being elected into office. So let's get started with our Newark news. So one of the stories that I read today from Newark moves on a $2 million commitment to build 100 units of housing for our neighbors without addresses. The city has selected 5 developers to build 100 homes for our neighbors without addresses. If you live in the city, you know that we have had an influx of our neighbors without addresses. We've had a lot of people move in to the city of Newark. Unfortunately, the housing that was available to them, there is not enough to go around with COVID-19 impacting our city and our families. There are more families, unfortunately, who are in need of these services. So I'm happy that there is a commitment to build this housing for our neighbors without addresses to make sure that they are warm and they have safe places to live. And we are building together as a community. So thank you, Newark, for that. It's going to take a little time to build it, but I'm glad we are earmarking some money to have that happen. So, New Jersey news. I didn't want to read this, but it's true, y'all. It's true. More snow is coming to us. Like, did we not get hit with enough? Like, we got hit with 2 bombs, 2 snow bombs over the last week. But unfortunately, the news is saying there is more snow that is coming to us, everybody. Wednesday and Thursday, 3 to 6 more inches of snow. So, pull your shovels back out, pull your salt back out, get on back out there. Everybody out there, get your icy hot together so you can rub on your back and rub on your legs. Everybody that's been out there shoveling. So there is a little bit more snow coming. So get prepared. It is winter time. It's February. Unfortunately, Puxatawny Phil, our groundhog, he said that it's going to be another 6 weeks. So get prepared, get your boots, but be safe. Please be safe out there. I haven't seen many accidents over the last couple of days. So please be safe out there while you're driving around, and be safe while you're shoveling. A lot of people are having back spasms and, potential heart attacks from inactivity over the beginning of the winter. So just be careful while you're out there shoveling. Use proper body mechanics while you're doing that. Next, there was a meeting held today from the legislators for the Committee on Public Schools, and there were advocacy groups there. There were superintendents and teachers who were there talking to the committee about putting in a federal waiver to have the standardized test for New Jersey actually canceled for this year. The waiver was put in for last year when COVID first started. The testing usually starts in April. So there is a push for advocacy um, organizations, community organizations, superintendents to actually not have the standardized testing this year. Are going through a lot. There are other ways that school districts in the state of New Jersey can actually have this data for students, right? They can build a portfolio. The teachers can build a portfolio of learning. The teachers who were on the meeting basically said that, having the standardized testing is going to give them the data of what they already know, which is that there is learning loss that's happening. But if they can have that same data just by building some type of portfolio within their schools, because they're teaching the kids, right? They have access to the kids. They think that would be a better way to go. I'm in support of any data that we can collect that actually would show what type of learning loss kids are having in schools, so we can make sure that we are allocating funding towards it, making sure that we are creating programming for it, and making sure that we are trying to reduce that learning loss gap that has now happened. I do feel like it's going to take a few years for us to get that done. And as we know, kids don't have a lot of time, right? They don't have a lot of time. They K through 12 goes really, really fast. You blink, your baby's in kindergarten, and then they're graduating high school. So kids don't have a lot of time. But if we can get the data and try and figure out now where funding needs to go, I think that that's important for us to now think about and make sure that we have that data for. So I have a really special guest tonight. One of my favorite people. We've had lots of face-to-face conversations. We were talking behind the scenes. We really wish that we could have more face-to-face conversations, but hopefully COVID will let up a little bit, and be able to have those face-to-face conversations. So please join me in welcoming Ashanti Jones, who is the manager of community engagement at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Good evening, Ashanti.
Hi, Tafshier. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
How are you? Good to see you. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Of
And I wore
course.
this shirt specifically because you were going to be a guest, right? The shirt says our Black kids deserve education, not incarceration,
I
which
love
is
it.
something that you've been working on and spearheading. This shirt gives me a lot of stares when I wear it out, in the summertime. Sometimes people come up to me and they'll say like, yes, that's right. We'll have conversations about it. But you are in the trenches doing the work for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. So thank you again for being tonight's guest.
Of course.
So I always want to check in with my guests first, right? Ask you, how are you? How you doing? How you holding up in this COVID-19 environment?
Well, we're a year into this pandemic and we're still adjusting. We had some major life changes with us moving. My mom moved, transitioning from in-person school to homeschooling, back to in-person. It's been a lot. But, we're definitely tackling it as best as we can.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I know you have a little one.
Mhm.
It's difficult we talked about that, being mom, being, community manager, being the chef, the cook, the clean, like the maid, like all of that. It's
At the same
definitely a lot
time.
for parents. Like, God bless the parents. God bless the parents, because it's definitely a lot. So, let's talk a little bit about your journey to social justice, right? Like what brought you. I know you're a social worker, by trade, but like what brought you to this journey of doing social justice and advocacy?
Well, I always wanted to be a social worker. I personally grew up in foster care. And so seeing those gaps firsthand, I knew that I was just going to grow up and transform the child welfare system. That's just something I knew, right? However, once I, got into a space at Columbia pursuing my MSW, I had an assignment. And the assignment was to basically identify an elder in our community and interview them. We're talking about their life course, we're examining their life experiences against the social climate of the time that they grew up. So we're talking from birth to where they are now, and we're kind of providing context for their life. When I was interviewing my elder, I was able to see through her story the ills of segregation, education disparity, redlining, the war on drugs, and how these really lofty political issues really showed up on the doorsteps of the everyday person. And it completely derailed my clinical aspirations, and I decided to pursue policy social work. And I've been doing pretty much community level advocacy ever since. In different spaces. So, whether it's been addressing education disparity in poor communities, whether it's been, connecting families to resources, or what I'm doing now, I'm really trying to give voice to those without power in a political space.
Yeah.
Is really, what I've really transformed to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that New Jersey Institute for Social Justice has been making some like real strong inroads in social justice in the state of New Jersey, right? There's been a lot of policies passed that
Mhm.
are helping incarcerated people, previously incarcerated families, children, students who are serving in youth prisons, trying to get those things done. What do you think is like the catalyst for this, right? For this social justice movement through the New Jersey Institute?
Well, the Institute was founded in 1999. And so like this work has always been here. But I think that true social justice work really embodies what's happening now, right? And so we started off talking about the economic disparity. That's when it was started. We founded, well, we didn't because I wasn't there, but the Institute was founded to really close that gap. But as we begin to see in New Jersey that issues of race, issues of class, and really like really large political issues started to really shape a lot of these gaps, especially the racial wealth gap, kind of expanded. So like even with like COVID-19 popping up, we completely shifted our strategy to address what was happening, on the ground with that. So I say that, some people who had some power and some money decided to start the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice in order to address these issues in New Jersey because we're from here. We love New Jersey. We want to make sure that everyone has equitable access to resources and equitable experience
Right.
as a citizen of the state. So it's
Yeah.
kind of been, where it is. And, it evolved from just being economic justice to incorporating democracy and justice as well as criminal justice reform. So those are the three pillars that where we are now. And I think just understanding how race and class really intersect to create these issues, that's like always going to be a catalyst for the work. As long as those issues of racism, systemic racism exist, we will always, always be evolving to address those issues as they arise.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Especially, in a state like New Jersey, people think we're in the North, we're a progressive state, we are a blue state, right? We have a lot of Democratic leaders here. But one thing people don't know about New Jersey is we are one of the most segregated states, right? In terms of like where people live in the actual state of New Jersey. Redlining years ago saw to that, right? And especially when we're talking about even our education system, we do have in New Jersey we do have families have the opportunity. There's a program that was set up years ago that has now been defunded, but there's a program that was set up for parents to be able to put their children into different school districts, even if they didn't live in that city, right? Um, it was all fine when the kids from like neighboring towns, right, like similar backgrounds, similar family backgrounds, similar income, were wanting to move through these schools. But the minute that school kids from under resourced communities wanted to come into these schools, oh wait a minute, this program is not working the way it's supposed to be, right? It got defunded. It hasn't been talked about in years. And that's just an example of how the state, purposely tries to keep people in their communities, in their schools, whether they're failing or not. And I think that's a misconception that happens in New Jersey when people think about us as a very progressive state. We're not as progressive as people think, right? And I think that having an organization like the Institute for Social Justice really starts to highlight some of those inequities and highlight some of those situations that we're having in New Jersey, and we're really making inroads. I tell people all the time when I go on different shows and I talk to people about the wins that we've had in New Jersey through the Institute of Social Justice. So tell us a little bit about a few of the wins that have happened over the last few years.
Yeah, so some very tangible impacts have been the restoration of voting rights for 83,000 New Jerseyans on probation and parole. Those are primarily Black and Brown people who were previously disenfranchised from the democratic process. That was happened earlier this year. After the COVID-19 pandemic happened, we did some very fierce advocacy with our legislators to ensure that because New Jersey was number one in the amount of deaths that we were having in our criminal justice system, we were able to pass the pandemic credits bill, which released 3,000 adults and 50 young people from incarceration in New Jersey.
Thank God.
November 4th. We were also a part of the advocacy that helped produce the baby bond legislation that granted $2,000 in accounts to babies born in 2021 by the state of New Jersey to kind of help close that racial wealth gap.
Yeah.
Of course, there's income guidelines for that as well. So if you're under a certain poverty level and you're having a baby in 2021, your baby does have access to that funds that will grow with them over time. And to your point about the education system not working the way it was intended to, 153 years ago now, a very prominent Black school was turned into what's now known as Jamesburg Prison. Unfortunately, we've been operating with that broken system for 150 years because, they wanted to desegregate the school and allow white kids to come in because the school wasn't able to produce what the state thought was a feasible number of white enrollees. They closed down the school and subsequently turned it into a prison, right? And so we've been operating with that prison for 153 years now. And so the 150 Years is Enough campaign was actually launched in 2017 by the Institute to close those youth prisons. And a major win with that was we got the former governor Chris Christie, to announce the closure of Jamesburg and Hayes prisons. And so that was that was a huge win for us because one, it addresses this broken system. It brings young people back into their community. And these are definitely victories, but we truly do look to empower, communities, because all of our work really does stem from issues that people are experiencing on their doorsteps, right? We want to engage every step of the process to ensure that we're addressing these issues in a very strong and direct way that hopefully changes their everyday lives. And so we're continuing, to do that work. And so now we are also produced a toolkit at the end of last year, a restorative justice toolkit that teaches communities how to build restorative justice hubs in their own communities, right? And that actually was heard by the Assembly as a bill. So it actually is now the Restorative and Transformative Justice for Communities and Families pilot program bill that was actually as a discussion on the Assembly side and is going for a voting hearing by the Senate on February 18th. So that's another win for us that we were able to take the experiences and the voices of the communities and turn it into legislation that's actually being heard.
Absolutely. And what I love, that the organization does is it's not one thing, right? You talked about the different pillars and the different ways that you can make a difference. Doing social justice. I think sometimes people think about it as just one way, right? Like there's only one thing that you can focus on that would lead to increased opportunities to make social justice better in communities, right? To have more voices heard, to have more people power. But I like that. I like the way the institute actually talks about different things, right? You talk about economic justice, and you talk about justice, community justice, and environmental justice, and like all these ways that we are helping the community in some of the ways that they didn't even know that they needed help. Right? I mean, if we think about some of the youth prisons. When we talk about how much it costs, right? And I do want you to share that with our viewers, how much it actually costs in New Jersey to house essentially a child, right? Someone under 18 to actually house them in a youth prison. And before the Institute started really digging into what's behind youth prisons, right? We know about the school to prison pipeline, right? Like we know what the mechanics of that are. If the kids can't read in the fourth grade, then they're determined to more likely be part of the criminal justice system. But thinking about students being in jail, right? Like these are kids that are in jail, right? Just thinking about that whole system and how for a long time people were just kind of okay with it, but now that the Institute has now shining more light and doing more data, people are really getting more involved in it and really trying to think of ways that they can rethink kids being incarcerated and more services and community services provided for them. So let's tell us a little bit about how much it costs to keep a kid in prison in the state of New Jersey, and what the benefits are, some more benefits to closing some of these prisons.
Absolutely. So the state currently invests $300,000 approximately to incarcerate a single young person every year in New Jersey. And that's the projected cost for 2020. And so now these prisons are, mind you, they're less than half full, especially with the passage of the pandemic's credits bill. There's even less young people in prison, which when the operating costs are remaining the same, in 2021, we're projected to go up, right? We're projected to spend in more than $300,000 annually to incarcerate a single young person. And when you are seeing the kind of racial disparities that we see, with New Jersey having the most racially divisive criminal justice system for young people, with Black children being 21 times more likely to be incarcerated for similar crimes than a white person. This is what we're seeing, right? And so if we made those same investments, in education, in mental health services, because we are seeing that approximately 70 to 80% of young people who are entering into the criminal justice system have a pre-existing, that's either underdiagnosed or undiagnosed mental health diagnosis. Why
Right.
are we not taking $300,000 and transforming our mental health system to make it more accessible, right?
Exactly.
Why are we not having young people resolve conflicts in the community where they come from to heal and restore the community rather than investing this money and incarcerating them? And so the restorative and transformative justice bill that's currently being held, it proposes that we build 4 restorative justice hubs in the cities where young people are coming from, right? So the majority of young people who are incarcerated in New Jersey are from Newark, Patterson, Trenton, and Camden. If we take 20% of the current operating budget for the JJC, the Juvenile Justice Commission, which is $8.4 million, and we run a 2-year pilot program, we can completely we can really derail the youth incarceration system if we address mental health concerns, as well as install restorative justice install restorative justice hubs in these communities and really addressing these issues. So it's a complete waste of money. It's a complete waste of time, because young people, this system is not it's not doing anything for the recidivism rate. We
Right.
are not stopping young people from going back into prison. So what is the point, right? If this system,
Exactly.
we need to dismantle it and build another one.
Yeah.
We also, with the 150 Years is Enough campaign, we also proposed the New Jersey Youth Justice Transformation Act, right, which will allocate $100 million, which is the equivalent of what we use, what the state allocates for opioid resources, right, and invest that into community services and a continuum of care that's based in the community, that loops in community resources, families, schools. We are hoping to get that passed, get these youth prisons closed, and completely transform how we view youth justice in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
overall.
I mean, can you imagine how many kids we could send to school, to college with $300,000? Can you imagine what we could do, if we had $300,000 per student in our public schools? I
I mean,
mean, sky's the limit. I
I
mean,
mean, we took that money, and even so, let's say a young person is incarcerated, right? Once they're not incarcerated anymore, and that money that was used to incarcerate them, it followed them back into their community to build resources, to make sure that they have a place to live, to make sure that we're providing job opportunities. Do you know how that can really transform communities? There wouldn't really be that much of a difference between urban and suburban communities, because
right,
we're closing that gap, right? If we invested those things in making sure that people have housing, have adequate public safety, have adequate education, have adequate health care, mental health care, we'd really transform the system altogether. So that's really what we're proposing, right? The money
yeah,
that you use to incarcerate young people, have it follow them back into their communities for the restorative justice hubs, to heal their communities, to have them build up those protective factors that they need to not encounter incarceration at all in the first place.
that's right. That's right. And what are some of the barriers that you're finding to creating those opportunities for families? Like, what are some of the barriers?
I mean, the lofty one is systemic racism, right? So, like, New Jersey hasn't really addressed the
Okay.
ills, it hasn't addressed its history with systemic racism. And if we don't address that, we can't heal from that. And so, one, of course, there's always going to be legislative pushback, because one, okay, we have uses for this money, right? We have a use for this money, so we can't really allocate $8.4 million of that.
Right.
And so where advocacy comes in, because we need to let legislators know how we want to spend our tax dollars, right? And so that's the biggest barrier. I mean, another barrier is people just not believing in the alternatives, right? We've been leaning into this system of incarceration since the inception of this country, right? And so when we're built, you have a country that's built on, built on systemic racism, built on white privilege, and we haven't addressed those issues,
Right.
made any other progressive moves to close the racial wealth gap or to invest in education, which are both indicators of criminality in communities. We will always experience a barrier to people understanding that these kids are not really criminals.
Right.
They're living in under-resourced communities, and they have to make a way. And
Yeah.
so, if we put that money and invest it into communities to give them the resources that they need, a lot of our young people would not be, ending up committing a crime in the first place.
Absolutely.
The average sentence being about 18 months for a young person, and they're spending a year and a half of their lives here in a system of incarceration just to come out with no resources,
Right. Right.
essentially you're essentially just giving them a circle to go right back into the incarceration system. We have to
Exactly.
provide resources for young people in the communities where they come from to stop this system.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I think, when you, a few years ago, when I came to the rally, they were trying to open up a prison that was down the street from a high school, from a middle school, and we talked a lot about, the opposite side of that, where you have families who, want to go see their kids in prison. The prisons are far away, the parents have to like spend money, and then you also talk about the money that's being spent in the prison systems, right? I mean, it's like $20 to make a call, right? I mean, families don't have that money, they already don't have that money, and now you're asking them to spend this extra money to speak to or go see their child who's in prison for, like you said, for situations that sometimes were out of their control because of the life that hand that was dealt them, essentially. So how can we as community members get more involved? There is a comment here from Ebonique. Are there any Big Brother and Big Sister programs? Also great influence that can help. We absolutely have a fantastic Big Brother and Big Sister program here in Newark. And I know that the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, you do a lot of coalition building, right? You partner with a lot of organizations in the community to make sure that information is being shared amongst the community members. Tell us more about some of the work that you do to try and galvanize community members together in coalition, so you can have like larger people power.
So you actually hit the nail on the head when you started talking about the cost of incarceration. So like we're not just talking about that $300,000 investment, right? We're talking about the hidden cost of incarceration to families, communities, and young people. And so it's really crazy because we and you did not talk about this, but we are currently in the middle of a process where we are looping in community members to talk about what these hidden costs of incarceration are, right? And so we're about 7 cities in out of our 11 city visioning session. And so one thing that I love about this work and I love about the Institute's approach is that we don't do anything without the community.
Right.
That restorative justice toolkit that I talked about, it was the result of 81 community members across New Jersey coming together to talk through these issues at listening sessions and visiting sessions. The community wrote that, right? We were there to facilitate this. We wanted to understand, how do these issues present themselves on your doorstep? How is your family impacted? What's missing from your community, right? And so we brought them all together. We brought community members together. We talked about these issues, and what we did was synthesize that information and turn it into policy proposal. And so that's essentially what we're doing now. We're talking to communities about the cost of incarceration to families that we're not really thinking of. And we're getting some incredible responses. I mean, it's clear that the community wants to be heard, and the Institute is giving them space to do that. And so I'm leading those conversations, as well as the conversations around mental health investment in communities as well. And we're hoping to develop a toolkit that would essentially be turned into legislation again, to really push forward this. And so contacting me is the best way to do that. Like I said, we lead these sessions, and we do produce the policy proposals, but it's based on the conversations that we're having with community members.
That's
So
right.
community members across six cities was where we came up with the restorative justice toolkit. Now it's community members across 11 cities, because we're talking to the cities where young people are coming from, but we're also juxtaposing that to the cities that are the suburban cities that are surrounding those communities.
Right.
How are they experiencing incarceration differently? How are they experiencing these costs differently? What does their mental health system look like? What does Montclair's system look like versus Newark's, right? And how
Exactly.
to bridge the gap between them to make them equitable. And we're not able to do that because we don't live in all of these cities. You all do,
That's right.
right? In order for us to understand that, we have to bring everyone around that table and talk about it. And so that toolkit, it teaches communities how to develop, build, and maintain restorative justice hubs in their communities. And it's pending legislation now, right? Our current listening sessions are going to empower communities as well to give their voice about these hidden costs of incarceration, and we're able to bring that to the legislators. But another way that we're able to move this legislation and really empower communities is we develop an action center. So the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice has an action center. It's located on our website. that allows you to just put in your name, your zip code, and it'll connect you exactly to who your legislators are on the assembly side and on the Senate side. All you do is press a button. It will generate an email of support that you can send to your legislator. Let them know, like, hey, listen, you work for us. We want you to support this legislation. You need to pass it because this is impacting my children. These are impacting my community. And so that's a little bit of the way that we're able to, really empower communities and families to get involved in these issues, because these issues that are showing up at everybody's doorstep. We have to ensure that, we're addressing those. So these are not things that we're just coming up with or pulling out of the blue or looking at statistics. No, we're hearing Mary, John, Luke, and Barbara tell us about their experiences, and we're turning that into legislation.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that, you are having these community conversations, right? Like you said, it takes everybody. It takes everyone to be in conversation. It takes everyone to talk about the things that are going on in their community. But you also have like solutions for people, right? It's not just a conversation of like, oh, we're having this problem. What woe was us? It's conversations about this is what we need to do. These are the steps we need to follow. This is educating the community on ways that they can get involved to take action to make sure that their kids are not incarcerated and they have resources and things that they need for their community. So we have a question here from Tommy Luna. In the experience of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, what this should have been, what are the best ways for folks to lobby the legislators?
Okay, I think the first thing is to understand your relationship with the legislators. Like, legislators are not above you. They are community members. They're from your community. You've elected them. They work for you, right? And so, like, understanding you have the power here. Just because they have the yes or no vote, they represent you and your interests. And so the best way to lobby your legislators is to, one, every single legislator is listed on the New Jersey website. Their email address, their contact information, their phone number. You can email them, you can call them, you can tell them you want a meeting, right? Be briefed on the issue, whatever issue it is that you wanna talk about, and go and say, hey, I'd like to request a meeting, or what are you doing about this? Or, hey, I heard about this legislation. I think you should pass it. Here are my concerns about such and such. And so I think that that's the best way to do it. You and your neighbors, right? So, like, be community advocates, right? You don't have to go and do it on your own. I feel like I see this here, the headache and the aspirin. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we're here to hear you. We're here to hear you, but we're also here to inspire you to say, how do you want to fix this? What would it look? What does it look like to you? Right. And so, bringing your legislators your problems is great, but bringing a solution is also great too. And if you need help with that, feel free to reach out to us, because I definitely will ensure that, we let you know where the Institute stands on these issues. And if there's any legislation that we have that's pending or that we're advocating for, we can definitely give you, the information about what that provides so that you're well briefed to lobby your legislators. But your legislators are not far removed from you. They're not they're not far removed from you. They are your neighbors. They live in communities. They have offices in your communities, right? Know where know where that office is. It's on it's on the website. It's on the website. All you have to do is look.
You can join in their committees, right? You can submit letters of support. Everything is on the New Jersey Legislative website.
Yeah, you can
do written testimony. That's right.
And it's all right there on the website.
That's right. I mean, the slogan is for the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, like do social justice, right? Like get involved, get in there, get in the mix of that, learn about it, advocate surrounding it. March in the streets, if you have to, which is a tactic, that we've used on several occasions with the Institute. Get your people together, get your community organizations together, get your neighbors together, make your voices heard out in these streets. And just as a reminder, New Jersey, all of your state legislators are up for election this year. They're up for election. So now's the time to have those conversations with them, right?
So if you want to earn our vote.
That's right. That's right.
About these issues. Every seat is up, including the governor.
Every single seat, including the governor.
Yeah, this is definitely a great time to begin seeing who's really representing you. And if you weren't engaged before, get engaged now.
Absolutely.
Because we've had, I've done testimony a few times on both the Assembly and the Senate side, and some of the responses that I'm hearing from legislators are regarding very progressive things that would close the gap, for Black people in this state. And I'm hearing some things like, what year is this? And this is who we have representing us. And so, like, it's very important to research your legislators, understand, look, and it tells you what bills they have supported.
That's right.
It lets you know their voting history, their voting record. You will know who's in those seats, and you can determine who you want to be in those seats.
That's
You
right.
could possibly be in those seats. So
I was just about to say that.
I'm just putting it out there. You could
Listen,
possibly sit in those seats, but
listen,
this
opportunity.
is your show. This is our show. We are the citizens. They represent us. We are
That's
the
right.
majority, not them.
That's
Okay.
right.
So
That's
they're supposed to represent our best interests. If you're not feeling how your legislators voting, set a meeting, send an
at a
email.
meeting, gather some people together, right? Talk about the issue, educate yourself on the issue, and then do what's in your power to do, right? Vote. Go out there and cast that ballot. Every family votes. Yes, National Parents Union, that is a campaign that we started last year. It's a campaign that we're going to continue to talk about because we want to make sure that every family votes in every election, every time, right? Every election is important. The slogan, the term, all politics is local, it's not just something to say, right? It literally is the crux of where um, people is like the first stop for community members to get support, right? In your local communities, your local person that you elected is your first conversation, right? Talk to the people in your community about what's happening in your community and make those changes in your actual community. And if that person's not making the changes that you want to see, then you be the change. You be the change that you want to see. I absolutely want to see more parents, right, on school boards, more families from underserved communities. I want to see more parents represented on school boards, more parents represented as district leaders. Look up the district leader list in Newark, everybody. Right, there's some vacancies, and district leader actually is one of the hardest positions to get elected to. Right, it's almost like the first, on the totem pole of like elected government, and it's one of the hardest to get elected to. But educate yourself on what your district leader does. Right, what are they doing for your community? You can have conversations with them as well, right? It's online. It gives you a list. If you go to your county Democratic club or your county organization, it gives you a list of everyone who's district leaders. So start educating yourself, people. I've been talking about this for years, right? Educate yourself on who's in power. Educate yourself on how to get power, and then make sure that you join in with coalitions like New Jersey Institute for Social Justice to make sure that you are helping to pass some of these legislations and policies that are benefiting all of us in the state of New Jersey. So, my last question for you for tonight, what I'd like to ask my guests who come on, who actually are parents, what is your parent impact?
Well, I think my parent impact is empowerment. I feel that sometimes you feel, especially I have a Black boy, right? That's my son. My son is a Black boy, and before I even had him, I was nervous about being a mother to a boy, and then God just so happened to give me a boy. I mean, it's just a lot of anxiety and helplessness that comes around that, a lot of powerlessness. And I mean, you already feel that being Black, but being a Black mother and having, I'm hoping that I'm helping people remove that powerlessness, right? Giving voice, to issues that you care about, but don't necessarily know how to go about. I feel that, conducting these community sessions and hearing the pain around people who have their children incarcerated,
Yeah.
and turning that into the dominant language, which is politics, which is white politics here, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I feel that it helps us give us power. Bringing these kids home is the most important thing to me. I feel that reuniting and reconnecting families, stabilizing communities, giving power to communities, and really transforming them in a way that really breaks down this divide is something that I'm hoping that I'm able to do. I'm hoping that I'm creating a better system for my son.
Yeah.
We got chokehold. We got the chokehold legislation passed.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah, of George Floyd. We That's important to me, right? So like now, in New Jersey, I don't have to worry about my son, you know,
Exactly.
being killed
Yeah.
by a child, right?
Right.
That's one less thing to worry about.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that, as we continue to develop policy, we continue to take away those parents' worries, right? As
Yeah,
we talk about reparations and we talk about closing the racial wealth gap, land banking, making home ownership accessible, giving voice to this disenfranchised, restoring their right to vote. Like, we're not done yet. We got 83,000 people the right to vote back. But what about the people who are still behind bars? Their voice matters too, because they have to come back to these communities, correct?
that's right. That's
So
right.
it's always a next step. And I think that, as a parent, I'm hoping that I'm giving voice and power to other parents to feel as if, we're creating a generation where our kids will be safe,
Yeah,
have a shot at equity.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all that you're doing, not just for your son, but for all the children that you are helping, all the families that you are helping with your work. We really appreciate you coming and talking with us tonight about the work that you're doing. If you want to take action and join Ashanti and her colleagues at the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, you can take action here, njisj.org/action center. And if you want to get in contact with Ashanti to be able to help her in the work that she's doing, have conversations about maybe how you can start the same work in your part of the country, please reach out to her. But we thank you so much for being our guest tonight on the Parent Impact, and keep on doing the good work that you're doing, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you out there in the streets.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Another great episode of the Parent Impact. We really have to make sure that we as community members are getting out there, we're taking action, that we are educating ourselves on what's happening in our communities and doing all that we can to make sure our communities are safe and make sure that our families have the resources that they need. Every family votes in every election, every time. A reminder, all of the seats are up this year for the state of New Jersey. So please make sure that you're educating yourself about who your lawmakers are. And if you feel like you want to run for office, please get out there, be the change. Get out there and be the change. Just want to remind everyone about the National Parents Union Parent Clapback for this month, February, Black History Month. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this amazing discussion. We're going to have activist Tamika Mallory there, and we're going to be talking about harnessing your activism, right? How do you really make sure that the activism and the advocacy that you're doing is making a difference, right? Action over activity, right? Activities are important. Doing things to build up to activity is important, but making sure that you're actually out there taking action is what really moves the needle when we're talking about social justice, we're talking about education justice, environmental justice, all the things that affect our communities and our under-resourced areas. So please make sure that you sign up for this important conversation. It's going to be great. I'm going to be a part of it. So please support us and join us for this. You could also go on the National Parents Union website. If you are not already a member of the National Parents Union, please join us. We have a lot of things that we do, a lot of conversations, we have a lot of training. You can be part of authentic conversations with families across the country, right? These are not staged conversations. These are actual parents who have lived experience. I've been a parent for over 30 years. The things that I talk about are things that I have gone through. This is lived experience for me. I am a parent choice advocate. I believe and will always believe that parents should have the opportunity to decide what education is best for their children. I will continue to work with parent choice advocates, and continue to make sure that I'm doing my part to make my community better and make sure that I'm taking action on behalf of families and behalf of children in my community. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we will see you next Tuesday, 6 p.m. on the Parent Impact. Have a good night. Thank you.